Hi, this is the Magnificent Midlife podcast, and I'm Rachel Lancaster. This is where we celebrate women in midlife and beyond. We challenge the status quo and bash those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. We're not over the hill at 40, 50, 60. We're just getting started, and the world needs us now more than ever. I'll be talking all things midlife, about issues that matter, and sharing fabulous stories of amazing women doing very cool stuff. Now is our time. My guest today is Carolyn Parry, and Carolyn is the founder of Career Alchemy, helping early stage and established professionals escape from a job they hate and create a career they love on purpose. She's an award-winning career coach, a TEDx speaker, and host of the Change Your Story podcast. She is president of the Career Development Institute, and she is based in Wales. Welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Lovely to be here.
It is lovely to have you here, and I'm very excited to be talking about careers and work and older women, because it can get a bit difficult for us, can't it?
I think you might have a point there, Rachel, just a tad.
Now, I'm going to go take you back first, and I know that you had your own quite early career crisis. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm going to take you back to when I was 17, because that was the crunch point that took me down the wrong path. I did French as one of my A-level subjects, and I fell across a book by Honoré de Balzac, the French Dickens, called La Rabouilleuse, the Black Sheep, and it really captivated me. It was the story of nature versus nurture, a grandmother who brought up two boys, her two grandsons. One was stellar and the other became a rogue, and I was fascinated. And I got as far as understanding there was psychology or sociology. I will confess this is in the days before the web. Yes, I am of that vintage. And so it was late 70s I was trying to work it out, and careers really wasn't a thing in schools then. My father was very business focused. My mum was a stay-at-home mum who had ambitions for me, because that was the focus of her life, was to make sure I became a success, I think. So there I was. And I remember the day clearly when my father said, university, what are you thinking about doing? And I said, well, there's this thing called psychology or sociology. And he looked at me, and I got the stern, patriarchal, strong Welshman look, and I withered slightly inside. And he said, if you're going to university, go and do a proper subject. So I did French, mainly literature, with Italian as my subsidiary. So I did the old degree bit, spent a year teaching in France, realised I didn't want to do that. Thank you very much. But I had this sort of sense of, right, off you go down the business route. Now, when I graduated, which was 1983, I say it quickly, 1982, 83, I phoned my local estate agent and talked my way on to what eventually became the Lloyds Bank Black Horse Agency's graduate training scheme in property. Lasted 9 months. I got to the stage that I believe you put the hard work in, you get the rewards. And so I was putting the hard work in with the clients, but the rewards were going to Andrew, who was the first to pick the phone up on a Monday when the offers came in after weekend viewings. And I just got to the point, I thought, I can't do this anymore. So I found my local employment agency and said, get me out of here. I'm a graduate. I'm going nuts. They got me into working in a defence and aerospace publisher. Spent a year there, ended up as ad manager for UK Scandinavia, and then got poached by a software company to work in the software industry, which I did for another 5 years, which is where I met my husband. And I suppose all of that, apart from me starting my career, was other people saying, what about this as an opportunity? Me going, yes, okay then. Not really considering it. So there came a point 5-6 years in the software business. We'd acquired a business from another company. We'd gone from 1,000 people to 5,500 people overnight. And if that happens in a corporate, this is a FTSE 250 company, the knives come out and the carpets, the corridors of carpet are full of blood. And I acquired a boss from the other side who very early on said to me, is it that women in business only get on by sleeping with people? I went, pardon? That's not quite how I thought things worked. I was off for a little bit with stress, as it happened, unsurprisingly, and came back intentionally pregnant. Went in for my pay review, which was normally, the lads were all coming out with 13%. I got told mine was 9%. And I went, sorry, could you explain why? And he said, yes. He said, because he said, you're pregnant and your future with the company is now no longer certain. At which point I said,
Oh, my
can I just read this
goodness.
back to you? And I read it back to him and he went, yeah, that's what I said. I went, right, okay. So I went and saw my boss again and said, look, these other things that have been, or my boss's boss, who'd been my first boss. And I said, these things I've been saying about his attitude being wrong. This is what he's just said to me. What do I do with it now? And he said, well, you take it formal. And at which point then the rug got lifted and stuff got swept under the rug at a rate of knots. I then went off on maternity leave and finally had my employee hearing when I was 9 months pregnant, just about to pop. And the main board director took one look at me and my condition and one look at my thick file of cross-reference notes and evidence, and looked at the management rep that had come in and looked at his very slim pocket diary. And within 20 minutes, we were talking terms. Now, my husband, who also obviously worked for the same company, came in as my employee rep. I walked out my company car for 6 months and my salary for 6 months. And my husband got made redundant 2 weeks later. So there we are. We just have our first child. We're sitting there, lots of money in the bank, no jobs. So we went self-employed and we went through a series of different things. We set up a marketing consultancy and we developed a product that was a software product all about sales and marketing. During all this time, going back to that original question you said, what happened? I was moving further and further away from who I am and that sense of being fascinated by nature versus nurture. And you can find yourself being really successful, but it can erode your soul. And that's what was happening with me. Anyway, cut a long story short, we sold the magazine out to another company. We turned it into a .com. And then 6 months in, I went, I can't do this anymore. Because it was the sales and marketing that was just wearing me out. And I developed an underactive thyroid along the way. There's a message from the body, an autoimmune response. So finally, I went, I can't keep doing this anymore. And I'd applied for a job in the university in Aberystwyth, got shortlisted for that. And it was because I had somebody who saw something in me, a dear lady, a friend of mine, not too well now, called Dr. Monica Jallock, who could see a passion for somebody who wanted to make a difference and recognise the skills I had. And I spent a very happy, most of the time, 15 years at the university. And by then I was 53. And there was an opportunity for voluntary severance. And sometimes in life, there can be some turbulence in your workplace and you go, I think I might make a wise choice here. So I took the money and ran and started Career Alchemy. And that was often what happens to people in their 50s. They go, so there's only this much in front of me. I want to do something meaningful or more meaningful than what I'm doing now. And for me, it was I wanted to develop something that enabled people to career coach themselves, to go through a proven process that would enable them to spot what was working, what wasn't working. And so that's what I've been doing. That's now research proven. It's called Inspired. And I've had the most astonishing set of opportunities since I took voluntary severance. And I think for me, the message there is when you follow, there's a guy called Joseph Campbell who says, when you follow your bliss, doors will open for you in places where there are only walls for others. And I've certainly found that to be very true.
Yeah, I think that is massive, actually. And it's a shame that we have to wait so long for that realization to come. I'm very similar. I had a long corporate career and it sucked my soul.
Yeah,
exactly. It did. It took my soul. And eventually, I got to around 40 and I just thought, nah, I don't want to do this anymore. Don't want to live like that.
same sort of age.
Yeah, so that was, and then, so I went freelance, and then it took me a while before I set up my own business. But it's a shame in a way that it takes us so long, isn't it? But at least we get there eventually. But
yeah, we do get there eventually. I think there are skills that you pick up along the way, and I think the pain has to get to a point to make you to change, because it's very easy to follow the conventional path, the perceived wisdom, get a job, work hard, you'll be fine. But actually, if you look at everything that's happened since with COVID and cost of living crisis and all of that, particularly COVID, that gave us that pause to go, do I really want this life? And that's why there was so much around the Great Resignation, the Great Regret, and all of those phenomenon that we experienced in the last couple of years, which are still resonating now and will do all the more because of AI. So you're right, it does. I think if people can have good quality career support, career guidance, one-to-one support, or go and do that graft themselves to understand who they really are, what difference they really want to make, if they understand what's special about them, what their unique talents, gifts, whatever you want to call it, are, and what they want to put it in service of, they will get there quicker. It's just taken me 17 years as a detour to get back to working on nature nurture from sort of, 18 to 39, and then a period learning my craft in many ways, and also learning what I don't want. Because knowing what you don't want is as important as knowing what you do want. And the more you go up the ladder, the more that you are subject to other people's vagaries and pulls and pushes. And I, at one point, was looking to scale quite significantly. And then I just went, why am I scaling? That turns me back into being a manager or a director. What I love doing is the one-to-one, because I can see the shift in that person. And I know I've made a difference. I can't remember that whole quote, but it's something about, be the world to one person, and you can really help that individual go from misery to joy. And although I did spend a bit of time in the last few years, I was doing some work with parents and teenagers. I was working with EY, the consultancy, on their apprenticeship campaign, and did some more stuff around that, and did some free stuff on Facebook for parents with teenagers, because I could see the impact that was coming on them. Prevention for me doesn't give me the joy that cure does, because I understand intrinsically how much it hurts, like you do, when you're in the wrong place.
We do what's expected of us. I did what I had to do, because I got myself into a relationship where I was the sole breadwinner for a long time. So I had to follow the money. I had no choice. And eventually, I got to a position where there was a bit more flexibility. And I know for a lot of women, that financial situation can be difficult, because, and especially now, with the pension age increasing, and you've got this ridiculous scenario, haven't you, where we're expected to stay in work longer, but ageism, gendered ageism especially, means that it's really difficult for us to stay in work, let alone change work and do something else.
Yeah.
We've got so many things stacked against us, haven't we?
We have. And I'm one of those that should have retired at 60. So my 60th birthday, which happened to be in lockdown, was like a double whammy. So I can't even celebrate. And I wouldn't retire in, because I love what I do too much. I've spent too long getting here to want to give it up just yet. Although that point might come in the future, far off in the future. But you're right, there is that economic imperative. And I think women are very good at being givers, and they will sacrifice everything about themselves for children, husband, partner, parents, where their needs are. We get sandwiched by youngsters on the one side and looking after older folk on the other. And then sometimes we have that bit about looking after our partner's other halves as well. We keep there's a lovely little saying, isn't there, about mums are the buttons that keep families together. And I think women are the buttons that keep things going, because we see the work. There's a lot around the emotional labour that women do in the office, for instance, about being the tea maker or organising the social and being expected to organise social events and stuff. I have to say, I very early on refused to make tea, because I wanted to make the point. I mean, I sat in a room with all these blokes going, you're going to make the tea? And I went, sorry? What, can do what? No, would you like to? I'm sure you can do it better than I can. And there was this silence. And I remember this other meeting we had about whether women could wear trousers to work or not in the 80s.
Oh, when my first proper job was in a Scottish bank in the City of London, and we were not allowed to wear trousers. I could not wear trousers.
No, I couldn't in the software company either. That doesn't exist anymore. It's been bought up and swallowed up and whatever. But we were not allowed to. We had this meeting, this staff meeting.
That's how far we've come, actually, in a relatively short period of time. When you think about that, both you and I couldn't wear trousers to work, when we started our careers. And now we've got artificial intelligence. It's like, okay,
I know.
Yeah,
and you talk
quite
about
a big change.
You talk about that tech. When the first working in the estate agency, we used to have card boxes that had cards in them that had the details of the people and what they were looking for.
I had a Rolodex.
Yeah. And then when I moved into defence and aerospace publishing on the advertising sales side, my first mail shot went out on a telex. And then I spent £25,000 of the software company's money producing 1,000 slides for a total quality conference I was running with managers from all around the world coming. PowerPoint had not quite come in robustly enough. It was like another couple of months before PowerPoint was there. Now you'd never spend £25,000 or sit on your hands and knees boxing up 1,000 slides into carousels, would you? You drive to a meeting, you'd have to use the little red phone box complete with the wonderful odour to tell them that you were late or lost and find out where to go. You used to have to take your videos back to Blockbuster. You couldn't download on Netflix. Massive, massive change. CRM systems, email systems, Internet of Things, printers reorganizing ink now. The challenge is when they don't work.
I was thinking the other day that actually when I was working in the bank and in PR, I don't think I had a computer on my desk.
No, I remember getting my first computer.
I don't think I had one. I think I had an in tray, paper to look at, but I didn't have any internet, and we were sending out press releases on fax machines.
Yeah. And that's how much we changed. And we're going to change even quicker moving forward.
I know. And now we're all fired up because I think our generation, we've got all this wisdom and we've got all this experience and we're getting feistier. And I think that is super powerful. And, the way we're aging is different to the way our mothers and grandmothers aged. The fact that we're also... so many of us are in the workplace. And I think that sometimes when we talk about menopause in the workplace and we talk about women struggling in the workplace around menopause, I think people forget that we are the first cohort to collectively go through this period in often quite intense work environments. We work in far more stressful environments than we ever did before. We've got all of this social media and all of this input all the time, adding to the sense of overwhelm that often hits women in midlife. So I think people forget that. And it's interesting actually to have talked about the changes and the speed of the change, that all of these things impact how women go through the menopause transition now and how they adapt to getting older.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it gives women other choices, actually. I did some work, interestingly, for Aberystwyth University a few years back. They were going through a restructuring. So we took a lot of their professional services staff through a redundancy support process where we were looking at options and how to go into the marketplace. Because lots of those, it's quite interesting because being professional services, probably 95% of the people that went through that were women. Because women tended to opt for the admin role because that's the sort of thing that you can have school hours in, you can work term time only and it fits with the family, but it does mean career sacrifice and the impact on pensions, as we know with the gender pay gap or gender pension gap. But a lot of those women were sitting there going, well, this is all I know. And actually, you start talking to them about, look at becoming a virtual assistant, become a VA. Do this stuff online, and the COVID shift to working from home will have helped that no end. But also the support for business startup now and the packages that are out there, the software that's out there, the opportunities that are out there to do something online that's entrepreneurial, to own your own gig, to test out a side hustle safely before you leave the full-time day job is so much greater than it was 20 years ago. And I talk as somebody who's starting businesses back in the early 90s. And so there is a lot more opportunity, I think. And I think there's somewhere women are very well placed, and that's our level of emotional intelligence. Because that's the thing that makes the difference, that even the advances, the rapid advances in AI and generative AI and all the stuff that's being talked about in the media at the moment, the difference is the sticky stuff from emotion that they cannot yet do, these machines. They can do some of it. And there are things like that there's a robot therapist that you can go and have a conversation with. And there's research that shows that people found that quite helpful. I'm not convinced that that's as helpful as working with a skilled advisor who knows intuitively how to tune into that client and understand and interpret everything they're seeing and feeling. And that's where women have the edge, I think. Lots of research shows that although we have massive imposter syndrome, more, and everybody has it, but women have it more, particularly high achieving women, because that's where the research first started, wasn't it? It was around high achieving women. And I think some of that's the conditioning about we have to be perfect. We have to do it really well. And if it's not really well done, it's an absolute failure. All of this stuff, though, plays to our strengths with the emotional intelligence that we have, the ability to read the room or the virtual room and to provide the support in the way that is needed and to build empathetically on top of the AI that is coming forward. I think we'll see some interesting times over the next year or so, or 2 years. We're already starting to see knowledge workers being affected and knowledge worker jobs being replaced by AI. And so
What do you
the
mean
whole
by a knowledge worker?
A knowledge worker, so somebody who's working in an office using brains rather than, and white collar workers, if you like, to use a really old fashioned expression, rather than those who are on more vocational routes. You're not going to get a plumber replaced by a robot because of the complexity anytime soon. Because the complexity, even with vision systems, when vision systems were out in the 80s when I worked in the software industry, by the way, so vision systems are not new, neither is virtual reality. It's just not really ever quite flown until recently as much as it could. But you're not going to get plumbers being replaced by a piece of kit because of the complexity of the environments that they're in. Whereas when you're looking at decision making, some of that you can predict, for instance. Some of the knowledge worker stuff, the admin stuff, can be automated through Zapier and all sorts of apps and bits of software and widgets and whatever. So there's a big shift coming from, I think, from the perceived wisdom that to be really good in your career, you went down that sort of corporate route in a way. And if you were vocational, well, okay, but that wasn't quite as good, really. And that is really shifting in the messages that are going out across schools now. I see that with the CDI members, for instance, that we're talking openly and members are talking consistently about, look at an apprenticeship. You can do a degree apprenticeship. You don't take on the university debt, which is only going to get greater as the payback time has been extended and the interest rate's not going to be quite as convivial as people might like it to be. And you do have to ask the question, is university really right for you in terms of where you're going? Because if you're just going for the experience, you could take a gap year and go and have an experience of how to live without taking on the debt. And that's not that I'm anti-university, clearly not, but it's about the context of the choices you make. And we're in this stage now of lifelong learning, of course. And there's nothing stopping any woman going and investing in themselves and growing their abilities. There's lots of opportunity, whether you're looking at all the massive open online courses, Coursera, edX, FutureLearn, whether you're looking at platforms like Udemy, where you can buy short courses. I've just done, not just last year, I did a course on how to podcast at my local university through lifelong learning. I've also done a writing course because I'm writing a book at the moment. There's nothing stopping us from learning apart from our own decision to back ourselves. And I think that's the trick. We have to mitigate and act for our futures with the same sincerity and faith and energy that we do for everybody else we support in our lives.
Boom. Yes, absolutely.
That's the challenge.
Yeah. Because it's about applying our mothering abilities to ourselves, isn't it?
But we're not taught that.
Because I know we're not taught that.
We're taught the opposite.
But we do it for everybody else,
yeah,
don't
we do.
we? But that's what I love about, this time of life, post-menopausal time of life. It's just, my time now.
My time. Before you've got grandchildren, maybe.
Yes.
And my time of life becomes slightly less my time of life. But doing other pleasurable things.
But again, that's a choice. That is a choice, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate. We've got 2 grandkids in the family. My husband's 2 are 9 and 10. I think I've got that right. There might be 8 and 9. I think I've exaggerated. 8 and 9. There's 18 months between them, and I always get the year wrong. No, it's all right. I've confessed to my husband's daughter. There's 18 months between them, and I'm always on. So
Can you remember their names?
Oh, I know their names. Yeah, absolutely. Anwen and Elliot, if you're listening to this, I'm sending you big hugs from 9 in Wales. So that's never a problem. But it's the, hello, what age now? Maybe that's my age and my brain's starting to not retain that stuff. But I don't think so. Because she did actually very kindly say, it's all right, we have to think about it as well because of the 18 years. So 18-month difference. So there's 6 months when there's only a year between them. See what I mean? And so, hang on, which one are we on now? Okay. So actually, I think we're on 8 and 9. Because Elliot's just turned 8 and Anwen's turned 9. And then my 2 are we're at the not grandchildren stage yet. So my eldest has just become a third of a century, 33. When did that happen? And my youngest is 31. And you go, goodness me. The last time I looked, they were still in primary school. Where did all that time go?
Yeah, it's good though. It's very good.
It's the rich tapestry of life, isn't it? It's the tapestry of life that we live, and we can weave in whichever way we want to. And I think that's the key thing. We can change our story. We don't have to sit and accept And we do, I mean, there's Gallup have done some really interesting research around employee engagement, which corporates have been engaging with a lot since about 2016. And in one of their reports, they talk about three types of people: the people who are intellectually and emotionally engaged, the people who are intellectually engaged but not emotionally engaged, and the people who are neither. And I call those stars, sleepwalkers, and saboteurs. We don't have to, and we don't have to be a sleepwalker. And that's about 68% of the population in the UK sleepwalk their way through work, in that they're intellectually engaged but not emotionally. The stars are less than 1 in 10 now in the UK. No wonder we have a productivity problem. And then the saboteurs make up the rest, 20-something%. And if you think about people that you work with in those terms, you know who the stars are and who the sleepwalkers are, you know who the saboteurs are. And we have a choice. And saboteurs are often stars who've been hacked off because they've been mistreated. So we have that choice to write our script rather than I'm just sitting here and grinding it out to get my pension, whatever that's going to be worth by the time I actually get there. Or we can say, and I'm not advocating, by the way, you don't go and do your pension bit, just to be clear, this is not financial advice, but we have the choice as to what story we want to write. We've got one shot at this gift of life. If we got given £1 million, we'd think about how we spend it. But we wake up every day and we just walk through life, and we don't think about, in enough depth and detail, I don't think. We don't think enough about what we want out of life and what we want to give to life and what we want to leave behind us. And I think that's where we start at looking at midlife. And that's why people in their 50s go through that second career shift. So very typically, the first career shift's between 25 and 40, when you wake up one day and you go, what the heck am I doing here? And you change direction. And then you toddle on for a bit. And then in your 50s, you get the wake up call that says third act, final chance to really make quite a big shift if I want to, thinking about those financial implications at the same time. But also recognizing you don't have to just shift your work and stay where you are. You can move location. You can go and live. It's far cheaper to live where I live now than it was to live in the southeast of England. And I've got much more room and space and peace than I would have had down there. So you have to look at the things around work to do with quality of life and what other things you might want to do. And do I need to only work part-time to afford this quality of life now? So it gives you other options. Does it give me the chance to go and volunteer? Can I go and actually try something new safely in this extra time I've created before I run the risk of shifting and it all going wrong? So I think we've got lots of opportunity and lots of chance to live the life that we want to live if we wake up and choose to.
And there's much more opportunity now to have what I delight in calling my portfolio career. You know, I do a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of the other. And, you know, I still have to pay my mortgage. So, you know, it's not all garden of roses, but I am able to explore different things and do different things. And you talked about those two different career changes. I'm classic that, you know, because I'm doing my master's in gerontology, you know, and I'm 57 in 2 weeks' time, you know, and I just love it. Absolutely love it. And I think we know that the longer we stay engaged with the world and the longer we are, you know, curious about the world, then that is very good for our mental health going forward. You know, it staves off dementia and Alzheimer's and everything else, you know. Yeah. So these things are all, it's not just doing it because we want to do it, but actually they're really good for us to do these things too.
They are, because if we don't have a sense of purpose, we don't get out of bed. Mm-hmm. And that's why people struggle with work. If on a Monday morning you're not going, I'm so excited to be going into the office, then you're in the wrong job. Or there's something else going on which is affecting your life. So good career choice brings economic benefit, it brings social benefit, and it definitely brings well-being benefit. And there's research that proves that. Because if you're going to work with a light heart and spirit to do the work that you enjoy, that plays to who you are, it's easy and it's recharging. If you're going to work to grind out a day doing something you're really not very vested in, and it's not particularly your skill set, you'll be clock watching all the way. And I would far rather live a life where I'm doing stuff that I absolutely love doing. I'm sure you're exactly the same. Let's do the stuff that lights us up, because actually when we do that, we'll get more opportunity, because people will see our sincerity, our integrity, and opportunity will come your way because of that. So being who you are with deep integrity in the workplace brings massive benefits. And that just means understanding who you are and making a wise choice as to which particular sector and which particular culture of an organization you choose to join. Because if your values aren't aligned and your capabilities and interests aren't aligned, there's a train wreck waiting to happen, which will either come through being fired for not doing a decent job, burning out because you can't take the pain anymore, developing some form of dis-ease. Why would you want to do that to yourself? You wouldn't inflict that on anybody else. Why don't we just inflict on us the things that we love and get paid to do it because we're doing it well and we're enjoying it? And the word spreads. So for me, that's the philosophy about how you find fulfillment, is understanding what fulfillment looks like. We take perceived wisdom far too much still. You cannot move forward, particularly in the world now, based on making choices by looking in the rearview mirror, because that keeps you making wrong choices potentially. And if you want to change, go and do a little test somewhere safely. Go and learn something, see if there's still a passion. Go and try it out. Go volunteer. If you're looking to change sector, volunteering as a non-exec director, which 75% of people, when they're non-execs, they don't get paid for it. But it's a great way to learn and test and shift into a different direction or a different industry. And it brings a richness of networks and opportunity with it. And sometimes you might get a tap on the shoulder. I've just been very fortunate. Somebody suggested to me I stand as president for the CDI. It was never in my vision. Although I knew we had a president, I never connected up that person there with me being able to step into it. That might have been because he was a bloke and there'd been blokes before, but there had been women too. I just never associated it. And so we all need supporters as well. And if you are out there doing a good job, somebody will come and knock on your door and go, I've got an opportunity for you. Now, the smart money is that the right opportunity for me? Because not every opportunity is. Sometimes you're serving somebody else's needs and not yours. But actually, when you consider it, is this the right opportunity for me to help move forward in the area I care about? Follow your lead. If your instinct's saying yes, listen to your gut and follow it. Because we have that other sense, don't we? We have our sixth sense, our intuition. If you read Daniel Kahneman's work, Thinking Fast and Slow, he talks about system 1, system 2, the conscious and the unconscious mind, and the unconscious mind being more often right than it's wrong, and the conscious mind talking us out of things because it's got a natural negative bent. And if we just trust our instincts and step forward a little bit, and we're brave and we stretch our comfort zone, we can find some magic things happen. And we just sometimes have to trust the process. We don't have to always know, although in today's world we all feel we have to know, because that brings a safety and a certainty. Safety and certainty is great, but it stops the ring of growth from growing. And keeping small is now not always safe, because the world's changing so fast.
But that's a difficult decision to make, isn't it? I'm always sort of, talking to my clients and to my community about it's safe to stay with what we know, even if it's not that good. And it can be very scary to try and do something different, especially, I think, if we feel we don't have those networks. I'm not at the level to be a non-exec director. I'd love to be, but I don't feel I'm at that level.
Now I think you said something really interesting. You said, I don't feel. I didn't feel I was either, despite all the experience I've had working two down from a
But I don't think I'd have the network either. I'm here in my garden office. I'm doing my thing. I'm recording my podcast.
And you have skills.
I have knowledge, but how?
And experience. And it's valuable.
I know. But how do I get that to the person who needs to know that? What would I do?
There may well be something that you're interested in contributing to that is allied to what you do. So what's close to what you do, and how can you therefore pivot and use that to open a door? Now, I have to say, I've been a non-exec director 4 times now, and each time somebody's approached me, which has been really quite flattering, and I've said yes. And there's been a couple I should have gone, not quite sure why I'm doing this, but I've said yes, so I'll carry on. And sometimes you do it to learn, and sometimes you do it because you can really add value. And I think the Ned trick is to know when to step back and you're not adding value anymore, or you've added as much as you can. But you get the opportunity, because you're looking for it, if you want to. And I think women don't tend to think of themselves as non-exec directs. I certainly didn't. Although I've been a director of a series of small businesses, for goodness sake. I've been a director. I just didn't really know much about what this non-exec director world was around. And you get non-exec directors on boards of charities, on big companies. And they're all sizes and shapes. So one organisation that would love to have support is your local Citizens Advice. They do fantastic work. I've just come off our local board. I've been on it 3.5 years, and I think 4 years, 4 and a bit years probably. And I think I'd got to the point where I'd given as much as I could do that was useful, and we had a change of chief exec, and I think the time had come for me to go. I've done my bit on that now, but I support the organisation because of the work they do. So if there's an organisation you admire, you could go and do a bit of volunteering first to understand what they're about, and then say, actually, I'd like to get more involved because I can bring in an understanding of women who have problems with menopause, who are falling out of the workplace, that might be useful for you, Citizens Advice, to help get these people back in or onto benefits or whatever. So there's lots of ways you take what you've got and look to find organisations who benefit from it. And the experience you've got, Rachel, of podcasting, I've got 130 episodes. I think you've got comms mastered. I think any board would go, oh, there's somebody who understands how to do comms around a topic. We're a bit poor on that. There's some advice and experience she could bring. That would be welcome. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does. That's really good. I love the Citizens Advice idea because those are everywhere, aren't they?
They are. Yeah. They are. They do sterling work and they need more investment.
Great place to start.
Yeah.
It's really expanding. You know, I'm always talking about being open to possibility and being curious about, you know, what might work. So you've really expanded the realm of possibility. Thank you.
You're very welcome. That's all we have to do is go, I've got this. Who could I help with it?
Yes.
Who needs this? Where does it sit as a natural ally as a topic? I'll go and see. And go and have a little look. And if you like the people and you like the organisation, see what comes up. You know, there's always opportunity for all sorts of organisations looking for non-exec directors. And it doesn't have to be that either. There's the local PTA. You don't have to be a mum to be on a PTA. You can be a school governor at any age, for instance. So it doesn't have to be a business either or a charity, but any organisation that could do with the benefit of your wisdom and experience, whatever that might be.
Always saying that the world needs more of older women energy because the men have made a mess. So I want women, I'm always saying that, I want women to step forward and not step back. And this is a brilliant way to enable women to step forward, isn't it?
It is. And it also enables you, you know, I'm very much one for giving. And I hope that's fairly clear. There is also sometimes some benefit that comes your way as well, because you talked about network. I don't have a network to get in, but actually you just go knock on the door. Once you're in, you have a network and you have people who know, like, and trust you, who talk to their networks and their contacts. And that's how doors start to open, because people talk. So the opportunity is always there. I think it's a question of whether A, we recognise it, B, we want it, and C, are we going to step up or not? And it doesn't have to be forever. Even if you do a year, you've done something that's helped you understand, that's helped that organisation as well. So there's been growth all round. It's Adam Grant talks about people who are givers, takers and matchers. Very often, a lot of people work on the matcher basis. I'll give something and something will come back to me. And that sort of reciprocity type thing. Being a taker is probably not something that's high on my agenda, as you probably gathered. But there are lots of them in the world too. But I think women are much more giving. And there's nothing wrong for any woman to go, I want to give, and at the same time, it's okay for me to receive some benefit from this. Even if it's only what we call in our line of work, the helper's high. You know, when you help somebody and the light bulb moment goes on, we get the hit of dopamine, a helper's high that makes us feel good. And if that's the reward we get for helping, there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Magnificent Midlife podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, follow and share it. Also, giving a 5-star review really helps get the word out. You'll find the show notes at magnificentmidlife.com. That's also where you can get my book, Magnificent Midlife, Transform Your Middle Years, Menopause and Beyond. Make the very best of your next chapter. Help me change the world, one magnificent midlife woman at a time.